Welcome back to Beyond the Numbers Live here on Joy News. We're going straight to the figures to bring you understanding on the figures, especially when we say remittances in terms of Ghana. I'm sure most of you have been receiving monies from people outside your country. When we say remittances, that is the outflow of money from either your relative or your friend who is living abroad and decide to send you some money to, make you feel good.
I mean, it's always convenient when somebody decides that, I'm sending you some 500, I almost said $5 million,
yes,
but
indeed.
Let's say $500.
Yes.
The person sends you in dollars, but the money hits your mobile money account in cedis. Do you really ask yourself, where does the $500, where does it go to? That's the same way if someone also sends you a huge amount, let's say $2,000 or let me even say $25,000, and it hits your accounts here and your mobile money in cedis. Do you ask yourself where the dollar equivalent, the euro equivalent, the pound equivalent, or the kwacha equivalent, where does it really go? And that's why it's important this evening to break down the issue of remittances. This is why it's important. If you look at the top earners in terms of foreign exchange for Ghana, we'll be doing that. And then you see, we are looking at the top 5.
Exactly.
Let's start from number 5, which is cocoa. Now, cocoa brings in $2.2 billion in the form of exchange, foreign exchange in 2020. We are looking at 2023. This is from 2023. Now, let's look at another, component, which is tourism. We're going to talk about that one as well. $3.8 billion from tourism. And let's see how much we are getting from oil. Now, Winston, let's go with the oil component.
Give us the same $3.8 billion in terms of foreign exchange earnings. Now,
gold is 4th with, I think, one of the highest.
Absolutely.
$7.6 billion in inflows in terms of forex. Now, just look at this. Cocoa there, tourism there, there's oil, there's gold. And now we are about to talk about that, should I say elephant in the room?
A very big elephant in.
Yes. Let's look at remittances. If we estimate this last year, the amount of remittances that flowed into this country is estimated around $8 billion. That is if you add what was tracked by the Bank of Ghana and then also audited by the Auditor General, plus if you add what was actually reported by the fintechs, we believe that the figure should be around $8 billion in 2023.
You know the interesting aspect, if you look at the cocoa, which is $2.2 billion compared to the oil sector, you realize that these are sectors that are kind of domestic. If you see cocoa, when we account for such a figure, we understand that this is a revenue that can be budgeted for. But we say oil and gold, which are predominantly, if you look at our GDP, when we reflect growth, the sector alone is not mostly controlled by Ghana. So it appears that we will not say totally Ghana receives $3.8 billion.
Then you are talking about seasonalization here. Now, of course, it's important to seasonalize the figures that we have here. If you seasonalize this, almost all the time, we get about 90 or 99% of the cocoa revenue, what we export. About 99% is surrounded to the country. But you can't say same for oil and gold because there are people taking components and portions. I understand that on the average, we get about 13% of the inflow. So instead of a gold, for instance, instead of the $7.6 billion flowing into the country, we end up getting sometimes less than $1 billion as a country, and a bigger portion of the cake is taken out of this country. But you can't say same for remittances.
Before we even come to remittances, these two elements are determined by global demand prices.
Yes, the prices.
Yeah, so the global market prices. So we don't control this. Those we can say we kind of control consistently is the tourism. If tourism can give us this amount of money, why don't we concentrate policy in those areas to boost this sector? But just as you mentioned, this is the bigger elephant, very blue on our screens right now.
Now, remittance, the reason why it's important is that now we are all complaining about brain drain. But it looks as if there's a positive side to brain drain. Tell us more about that one as well.
You are a young gentleman who has a family of 5. You decide to travel outside the country, and your family of 5, depending on, let's say, 1,000 Ghana a month. If I work in the state and I'm getting at least a week $4,000, if I'm to send some amount of money downwards, that is me sending remittances to my family. That way, the cost of living, the level of poverty in my family is eradicated because of my work outside there. So more technically, you may say I'm being brain drained, but nonetheless, I am supporting the economy.
So technically, you're saying that the economy or the country stands to gain from the number of people living in the country, because definitely when they do go, they will send something back into the system. But the question is, are we tracking all these monies that are coming into the system? We'll be joined by Dr. Tuahine shortly, but we want to tell you how much the Bank of Ghana has been recording as remittances for Ghana. And you can see the line.
Yes.
And it's averaging around $4 billion annually. This is good. Because if you are talking about remittances and then how much it is bringing into this country, and we're talking about $4 billion annually, that's huge. That's even bigger than what Cocoa is bringing in currently. It's bigger than how much we are looking for from the IMF. And a whole lot of other revenues, even the e-levy that we spoke heavily about, that we wanted that revenue in. It cannot compare itself to remittances. It's a big dog in the, if you talk about revenue streams. Yes. But the problem has we really have to interrogate if we are able to capture all of it. Because we've looked at the data and we've realized that what the World Bank is reporting on our behalf is not exactly the same as the Bank of Ghana is reporting. So, to tell us what is really the problem. Let's look at it this way and see the gap analysis of what is being recorded by the Bank of Ghana and then the World Bank.
This is in dollar denomination, so you can see there. As at 2016, you realize the gap there. There's a huge jump between 2016 and 2018. As at 2017, we're recording data captured by the Bank of Ghana. Bank of Ghana figure is the one in the blue line you can see there. The red one represents the World Bank data capture. So between those years, the Bank of Ghana captured a very high remittances flow of $10.7 billion US. But you realize that when you go to 2018, the figure dropped.
So almost that exactly 10.7 billion is like an outlier. Is that the true state of remittance that we are supposed to get?
It's not the actual numbers that should be reflected. Because if you look at the drop from 10.7 to 1 billion, it's a huge gap.
That means that makes the 10.7 billion an outlier.
Yes.
But the key question is, possibly it could be the true state of remittances into the country. Is it that we did something for us to get, the widening gap?
The widening gap began when the central bank decided to institute some policies to constrain, or let's say, regulate the sector. Deregulation of the sector began in 2020 when the central bank introduced a policy to ensure that most dealers are aligned with the central bank's regulation to ensure monitoring. And there was an introduction of 11 fintech companies who decided to play the same role as taking and monitoring remittances. But the issue has to do with whether the Bank of Ghana has a direct oversight over the activity. So
technically what you're saying is that you have one football game,
yes,
2 players, but it looks as if the Bank of Ghana has separate rules for each of them. Now, let's go on the phone lines and now interact with Dr. Remittances, who is a banking consultant and an expert when it comes to remittances. He's seen a lot, he's written a lot about this area. Doc, I'm sure you've seen the graph on the screen, and you are not very surprised because you've been dealing with these figures for a long time. We know something happened in 2019. Where the Bank of Ghana introduced a new act to bring on board 11 fintechs and also open the space for more, players to enter. Is this a reason why we are seeing the gap between what the Bank of Ghana is reporting versus what the World Bank is reporting, Doc?
Thank you very much, and good evening to your cherished viewers. I think the diagram is the true reflection of what has happened over the years. The unfortunate thing is that ever since the Payment Services and Systems Act was passed, you could see that there has been a decline in the remittances from 1 billion to 2 billion, 2.3 billion, 0.1 billion. And that is what I think in one of my papers I said that, are we tracking, tracing, and capturing these remittances? Unfortunately, we haven't done very well in practice. But what has really validated or confirmed my 2022 is when Bank of Ghana recently, in their accounts 23, said that fintech are rich about 2023 and then about 3 billion in 2022. Then it goes to validate why we are not achieving the maximum limit of our remittances. Because these fintech are being regulated under the Payment Service and System Act at 987/2019. But the banks that are recording and being captured are being regulated by the Foreign Exchange Act 2006, Act 73. And it's under every institution handling foreign exchange is expected to comply with the Foreign Exchange Act. So the question is that we realize that there is a regulatory dichotomy. A regulatory dichotomy in the sense that we have two teams playing on a football match. One team is being regulated by the fintech rules, and one is being regulated by the Foreign Exchange Act, which makes it very, very difficult because you want to play a level playing field rather than thinking about the fintech brings in the money, but it brings in the equivalent of dollars, or euro, or yen, or the Canadian dollar, which must all dovetail into our balance of payment. Unfortunately, because of the regulatory dichotomy, until the governor confirmed that the 57 billion has been captured by fintech, I didn't actually know what was the problem. So when he brought the figures, actually it confirmed my fears that the country is not capturing the needed remittances, which is far more exceedingly above cocoa and gold. It even beats the IMF debt of 3 billion. Because if a country is having about 5 billion sitting somewhere with some private initiative, then we are not getting the benefit of the foreign exchange.
Doc, a point well made. We understand that our neighboring brotherly country, Kenya, has been successful in tracking remittances for quite some time now. They do that quarterly. Why is it difficult for Ghana, who has a strong financial base and a financial institution, a lot of regulation, especially the regulator being on top of issues?
You know, they always use fintech as an excuse. But the way you license fintech, you must also regulate and supervise. You supervise in compliance with the Foreign Exchange Act so that all foreign exchange captured by them, if not 100%, at least certain percentage will come into the banking system to support it. You very well said in Kenya. I have done a work on it. I mean, the latest country that is doing well is not even in Africa. About 98% of remittances are captured through the banking sector. You can go to Bangladesh and you can go to Sri Lanka, which is in the same financial crisis or debt crisis. They are capturing an average of $400 million monthly. And we are capturing, if you multiply 400 million, multiply by 12, you'll be talking close to 5.2 billion. We are just capturing 2 billion, 2.1. And I believe a time has come either for the parliament to sit back and ask themselves, what law, how did they pass the Payment and Service Act without looking at compliance with foreign exchange aspect? And I believe this should be discussed, dispassionate of politics, and so that we country can benefit. Because, my brother, if we get this 5 billion, do you know we don't need the IMF money? We don't need it. And don't forget, more people have migrated into this jurisdiction. Next year, I'm sure we're going to get about 9 billion. And if these people are going to withhold about $9 billion of dollars, and the banks are going to go to, there is nothing to write home about. So I think it is not too late. The Ministry of Finance, the Bank of Ghana, and the Parliament, they should all be involved so that we can be tracing and capturing the foreign exchange which is being held by other institutions.
Well, of course, Doc, thank you very much. Stay on, and then we'll be bringing you more questions. But I want us to look at what's on your screens right now. So, Winston, in black is what the Bank of Ghana has been reporting from the period 2016 to 2022. And this is why it is important to talk about this remittance issue, because Bank of Ghana cannot be reporting 22 billion, World Bank 27.6 billion, almost 28 billion. Now, let's look at how the difference. Now, if you look at the difference between what the Bank of Ghana is reporting versus what the World Bank is reporting, we are missing about $5.6 billion. And this is huge.
This is huge.
$5.6 billion cannot be compared to any of the IMF programs that we've run.
Compared to 360 that we are currently seeking from the IMF.
Very, very low if you compare to. So why are we letting go this $5.6 billion? Is it because we can't track it? Is it because we've allowed the space for other players to come in, and that has created the leakages and the loopholes for people to milk the system? Now, Doc made a very important point, and I want us to look at it. This is from the Bank of Ghana 2023, report. This is absolutely audited, and we want to look at it. They make an important claim about remittances, and that's why we feel that's important to talk about it. The report says in 2023, 11 licensed fintech companies provided inward remittances to customers. The total value of remittances received in 2023 was $57 billion. Ghana cedis, that's what Doc mentioned, compared to 18 billion cedis in 2023. Now, let's look at this. Maybe if you look at it in cedi terms, you may not appreciate it because of depreciation. The 57 billion cedis that we are talking about, it gives you an equivalent of $5 billion if you should use the average exchange rate in 2023 to compute. And if you do same for the 18 billion cedis in 2018, you get a significant value. So we ask, if the Bank of Ghana is saying 5 billion has been tracked by the fintechs, if you add 5 billion to the usual 4 billion that we get from the dealer banks, that should give us about $8 billion.
Absolutely.
So why are we not getting that money?
That is a big question, and that is the elephant in the room. The key worry for most of us looking at these figures, understanding where it is driving at, is the fact that we've been losing huge amount of money due to our negligence. If we are to have a system and a tracker to understand where these monies go, where these leakages lead to, the key suspicion, especially if you're a business person, they look at this data to determine whether there's investor confidence in the structure. If I'm a business person, investor coming into the country, should be able to track where the money goes to. So illicit financial flow is surely an indicator of a business confidence or testing the business environment as an investor.
You are making mention of illicit financial flow. Absolutely. And this is, we have to bring in this element. We've been listening to people who are involved in this act, and they say, oh, now I don't even depend on the Bank of Ghana or the Forex market for dollars anymore to import. So what people are doing is that they set up a system here in Ghana. There's another system maybe in the UK or in the US, where if I'm in the US and I want to send you, Winston, let's say $1,000, all I have to do is to use that system in the US and then transfer the $1,000 into the account. That money stays in the US. The dollars that it stays in the US doesn't come into our economy. What happens is that there's another agent here in the country who will make the cedi equivalent in terms of the transaction on behalf of that transaction that's already gone on in the US. So what happens is that you find that all of us, the reason why we don't tax remittances is because they are not backed by productivity. Now, if it's not backed by productivity, see what's happening. Somebody sends, currently, if anybody sends you $10,000, we estimate around 150,000 Ghana cedis, right? 150,000 Ghana cedis into somebody's hands all of a sudden increases the person's disposable income. What happens is that automatically it changes
power to purchase.
Yeah, exactly.
So that moment we see inflation, more money in the system,
chasing less goods. So
Absolutely.
we have been studying the data. We think that the inflation we are seeing, it's not just because, we have more money, but the system is creating income for people that they are not really backed by productivity. If that 150,000 Ghana cedis comes into this economy and Bank of Ghana gets the dollar equivalent, fair enough. But here is the case, the dollar doesn't come into this country, but somebody benefits and gets 150,000 Ghana cedis just because he's been sent $15,000 in the States. And this is happening in the country.
Not just that, there are instances where I've had conversations with people who suspect that the easiest way sometimes to hide such huge amount of transfer is to enter into the crypto system.
Oh, okay, the blockchain industry.
Technology. So with that, it becomes difficult to trace where the money is coming from because of how the system operates. And consistently, the Bank of Ghana has released a statement to the public that they have not legalized the operation of blockchain, but nonetheless, it's an international platform.
Now, there's one, connection between mobile money transactions, total mobile money transactions, and our GDP. You realize that mobile money transactions has reached 1 trillion, our GDP 1 trillion Ghana cedis. So exactly whatever happens in the mobile money space is a true reflection of the country's GDP. But the question is, all of these transactions, majority are coming from remittances, 57 billion cedis in 2023, just coming from fintechs. And majority comes through the mobile money platforms. We're not saying it's not good, but it's because of how porous the system is and people are really taking advantage. I want to bring Doc on this. Yes. Doc, you've been studying what is happening in countries like Bangladesh and even our own IMF mates, Sri Lanka. What are they doing different that you think we can, copy from them?
Once again, they have been very proactive and also do what we call strategic alliances. They'll do strategic alliances. The fintech and the banks have now come into play. So there is a strategic collaboration between the two institutions. So they are not playing different roles. They are not playing different roles. What they have done what we call strategic collaboration, where the banks collaborate with fintech companies, where money comes. But after you take the competition or whatever, the rest have doctrine into the bank, where they can choose to support the foreign exchange, where they can choose to reduce the current account deficit and to create stability in the currency. So all that I'm trying to say is that as a country, we should go and learn the best practice. At least Bangladesh is the best country that we go and learn how they use the fintech and other blockchains into the banking system where money is the foreign captured and reflected traced so that we have it.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Richmond Ichahene, joining us there on the phone line. Now, before we go,
before we even go, let's talk about this interesting one. Yeah. The reason why proper tracking is important is because we have a current system that tracks dealer banks. So whatever that passes through the banking system is being monitored by the Bank of Ghana. It goes to the Bank of Ghana in terms of foreign, because nobody in this country is legal. It has the legal right to hold remittance, except for the Bank of Ghana, sometimes even the dealer banks for a period of time. Now, we are bringing you top 4 foreign exchange earners in the first half of 2023.
Data from the central bank.
Data from the central bank, audited by the Auditor General. So, number 1 is EcoBank. EcoBank in the first half of 2023, about $557 million of remittances passed through EcoBank. And Bank of Ghana is aware of this, and that's good news. Let's look at the second one, Winston.
Yes. Now, we look at Ghana Commercial Bank, GCB, recording $135 million. That is the highest, second highest earner, followed by
First Atlantic Bank. First Atlantic Bank, an amount of, I think, $127 million passed through First Atlantic Bank in the first half of 2023 in terms of remittances. Now, last one, top four, ABSA. ABSA, $135 million. So it tells you that these are monies that Bank of Ghana is aware of. They are passing through the dealer bank. So Bank of Ghana is able to monitor. These are huge amounts of monies. So that's the reason why, whether they are fintechs, whether they are blockchains, whether they are other platforms, we believe that Bank of Ghana must start, using the same rules and regulations for each of the, players.
These, when done, will ensure bring stability to our currency, will open our doors outside to many foreign investors who decide that indeed Ghana is a fertile place, ensure there is regulation of how monies flow. Big conglomerates look at these factors before they decide to invest in the economy. Consistently, we've seen investor confidence dwindling, we've seen investor interest dwindling, but with this approach, if Bank of Ghana decides to watch this and decide to go more stringent on the operations of the fintech and many tech companies, surely we'll get to a point where we'll be making domestic remittances and also foreign remittances to boost our currency against constant depreciation. And
that's where we bring, the curtains to a close on Beyond the Numbers. Next week, we shall come your way, same time, 5:30 p.m. It's a wrap.